Great. Could we start housekeeping, please?
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
So Chair is on her way in, so Mayor Solachi has agreed to start the meeting off so we can get going.
Great, thank you. So we'll call this meeting to order at 12:06 PM. At this point, we'll go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Good morning, everyone. Advisory Group Chair Veronica Padilla Campos. Chair Vanessa Delgado. Supervisor Hagman. Mayor Solachi.
Present.
Elizabeth Alcantar. Manuel Arredondo.
Present.
Pamela Atsiri. Angela Valderas. Dr. Lawrence Beeson. Susan Bilodeau. Ada Briseño. Paul Choi. Carrie Doy. Lisa Hart. Dr. Afif El Hassan. Mary Figueroa. Angela Garcia. Kareem Kangora. Anna Gonzalez. Dr. Jill Johnson. Humberto Lugo. Edward Marquez. Oscar Rodriguez. Donald Smith. Rafael Yanes.
Thank you for that roll call. I think most likely we don't have quorum based on the attendance that I'm here. Can someone confirm that just for the record?
No quorum.
So we don't have quorum to take any actions today, but we can continue with the agenda as scheduled. We just cannot take action until we have quorum. For the record, what would quorum entitle? How many more members have to be present?
How many more?
Just so that we can keep track in case others join.
So the total is 13 and there's 6 right now, so 7 more would have to attend.
7 more.
Yes.
So 13 would be quorum.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think Chair Delgado just joined us, so that's 7, and then it would be 6 more. So if Chair Padilla comes in, that'll be
So 5
Right.
more.
5 more after that.
Yeah.
Okay, just hope we can keep track in case 5 more members join. We can have someone from staff or attorneys keep track, and then we can go back to any actionable items.
Thank you.
So with that, we do have a discussion items. Item 1 is the approval of the minutes. So what we'll do is we'll just skip this item until we have a quorum. And if not, if we have no quorum, and I'll let the chair decide that, but we could just forward some of these items to the following meeting. Specifically, the minutes should be no problem, but for now, we're gonna skip the item, okay? Next, item 2, review follow-up action items. There's no motion required, so we're gonna have Lisa Tanaka Molly, just lead us into this discussion, please.
Yep,
Thank
great.
you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Mayor. So there were 2 action items from the last meeting. The first one was to include a discussion regarding ACA 16 as an agenda item, and that is on our agenda today, and Philip Crabb will be presenting. And then the members have requested an update on the warehouse indirect source rule, and that is also on our agenda for today, and Vicki White will be presenting. And those are all our action items.
Thank you, Lisa. And then because we do have public comment, do we want to dig up first or after the item is presented? General Counsel, what's your preference?
Yeah, typically we take it after each. item.
Okay, just making sure. So we will acknowledge, and on that note, I want to acknowledge the public here today. Thank you for joining us. And to our staff, we're of course always be prepared for our meetings. So with that, we'll have the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Crabb, and I will be presenting on ACA 16 Bryan per request of the membership. That's regarding environmental rights. So this is a constitutional amendment, assembly constitutional amendment that would amend the California Constitution to declare that the people shall have the right to clean air and water and a healthy environment. Just a little bit of the logistics behind it. It's on the status. It's currently pending on the state assembly floor for a vote. It would require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to pass. And it does not fall under normal legislative deadlines because it's an assembly constitutional amendment. As some folks may know, the 2 houses have already kind of adjourned for their first round of voting, but that bill can that amendment can still go up at any time. The assembly and the Senate need to approve it, but it does not need to be approved by the governor because it would then go next. If it were to pass the legislature, it will then go to a statewide ballot for a vote of the people. The timing of that vote, if it were to happen, is currently negotiable. However, June 27th is the deadline for the legislature to pass it in order for it to qualify for the November 5th general election 2024 ballot. And if it were to go to that or another statewide ballot, it would take a majority vote of the people to finally become law. So just a little bit more on this issue. The California Constitution, as you may realize, is one of the longest in the world. In part, it's due to California's unique initiative system that allows citizens to pursue amendments to the Constitution by initiative rather than just through the legislative process. So some states, besides California, have begun to incorporate environmental right amendments into their state constitutions. These are known as green amendments. These proposals attempt to protect the right to clean air and water the way more traditional rights like religious freedom and free speech are protected. Right now, according to our information, only Pennsylvania and Montana are states that have adopted green amendments. There are at least 8 others that have went ahead and are proposing green amendments. That's Washington, Kentucky, Vermont, Arizona, West Virginia, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Connecticut. So, I think there's definitely a strong push from some of the environmental advocates to go ahead and do this. And this provides kind of like some clear protections and leadership in trying to maintain and protect environmental rights within California. There is some opposition out there that is basically calling to say that this would create an ambiguous standard that really could potentially challenge lots of state and local government infrastructure projects. There would have to be determined, what could be done or not done based on this new kind of ambiguous constitutional right. So those are kind of, I'll just stop there, but that's kind of like the controversy is protecting the environment's important, but then what are the consequences of doing that? And there's a lot of ambiguity there. There are a large number of supporters listed. There's probably over 50 listed, so it's hard to name them all, and about 4 that are in opposition currently. And I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
For that, any questions for Philip, please?
Just for the record, I wanted to clarify that the state of New York has adopted it back in 2022, I believe, and it was passed with an overall majority of the people that voted that green amendment in. So New York is another state.
Great, thank you for that update. Any other questions? Okay, anything? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on. Do we need now formal public comment for this item? Any public comment? No hands raised on the screen. Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to the next item. We have item 4, Vicky White.
Thank you. Just waiting for the slides.
Okay, we're gonna have a
Thank
slide.
Great, thank you. I'm Vicky White. I'm a manager here in our Planning and Rules Development and Implementation Division. And today I'm going to be providing an update on the warehouse program, also known as the Warehouse Actions and Investments to Reduce Emissions, or WARE program. Next slide, please. Just a quick background. Rule 2305 was adopted by the board in May 2021. And it aims to reduce NOx and diesel particulate matter emissions from mobile sources associated with warehouses. This rule includes a phase-in schedule for warehouses based on their size. By 2025, all applicable facilities will be fully phased into the rule. Throughout this presentation, you'll be hearing me refer to these different phases based on the implementation update today. We do give regular updates to the Mobile Source Committee. The most recent one was in March of 2024. That was what we call a mid-year update. And I did give an update here at this to this advisory group back in November. What's different this time around, you might recognize some of the slides, but we have an additional year of reporting. We've completed the 2nd year of reporting under the program. So I'll be talking about some of those results today. Next slide. Before I get into the program implementation activities, I just wanted to quickly update you on a couple associated activities with Rule 2305. EPA has proposed approval of Rule 2305 into the SIP. Shortly after, a few months after rule adoption in May 2021, South Coast AQMD submitted this rule to CARB and EPA for approval into the SIP. EPA, nearly 2 years later, EPA did not yet take final action. So several environmental groups filed a lawsuit against EPA to take a timely final action on this decision. So along this path, what happened was in October of last year, EPA issued a notice. Basically, it was their proposed approval of Rule 2305 into the SIP. They're proposing to include it into the SIP as a SIP strengthening measure, which is what we were expecting. The comment period for that action closed November 2023. And so we're just hoping a few months from now, we do get final action from EPA in July of this year. Next slide, please. Another thing you may be aware of is there was some litigation brought against Rule 2305, the WARE program. This lawsuit was filed by the California Trucking Association. There were different parties that intervened on behalf of both sides of this lawsuit. In December of last year, just a few months ago, the district court ruled in favor of the South Coast AQMD and denied the plaintiff's claims, upholding the justification that we provided for this rule. And the plaintiffs, in this case, have not appealed this decision. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to get back to the rule itself, and you probably remember this slide from before. It's important because I'm going to be talking about the results from each of these different report types. So this slide shows the three main report types that are required by the program. The first one in blue is the warehouse operations notification. This is a one-time requirement that the owners must comply with. They have to submit this notification to us. It basically includes information about the warehouse building and any tenants that are operating within the building. The next report in green is what we call the initial site information report. This is the first report that a warehouse operator must submit. It includes information on their baseline operations, what amenities they currently have at their site, as well as what actions they plan to take to comply with the rule. And then in purple is the annual WARE reports. This is the main compliance report that the warehouse operators would have to submit each year moving forward under the rule. And it basically documents the actions that they took to earn WARE points to meet their compliance obligation. And yeah, that's the main compliance report. I'll be talking about the first 2 years of reporting based on these reports today. Next slide, please. This is an implementation timeline for the first 3 years of the program. Starting with 2022, this was the first compliance year for the phase 1 warehouse operators. This is the larger warehouses. So looking at the first row, starting at the left, you'll see that the first report that came due was the initial site information report. And the phase 1 operators had to submit this report in July of 2022, followed by phase 2 in July of 2023. And in a few months, in July of 2024, we'll be looking at seeing these reports from the phase 3 warehouse operators. And phase 3 basically are in the group of the rule applies to warehouse buildings, 100,000 square feet or more. And this will be the final phasing, bringing the warehouses fully into the program at that stage. Next row is the annual WARE reports. We do have 2 sets of annual reports that have come in. We've completed 2 years of reporting under the rule. I'll be discussing the results of this reporting soon in a few minutes. And in September of last year, we made a big effort to issue a compliance advisory, and we're also very focused on enforcement right now to help improve the reporting rates under the program. And I'll be discussing that in a later slide. Next slide. So now, focusing on implementation, the first thing that happened was one of the options under the WARE program is that warehouse operators can take early actions. So these would be actions that they took early prior to their compliance year that they have to, the compliance year is when they're required to earn the points. This is a voluntary option to them where they can take early actions and earn WARE points prior to their compliance period. And then based on these points, they can use these points for future compliance under the rule. So what we saw was a lot of operators opting to do this. And, when you look at this graph, you'll see the total WARE points that were earned through early actions, as well as the number of early action reports that were received. For example, in calendar year 2021, we received over 100 reports, little over 100 reports, and the different color shaded areas within the bar are just representing the different phases of the warehouses that are in the program. So you'll see that, the number of early action reports go down with time, and 2023 is actually the last year, because in 2024, all warehouses will be phased into the program and required to earn WARE points. So this option to earn early action points ended at the end of 2023. So this was a nice to see that we got some early actions taken by these warehouse operators. Next slide. So this slide kind of talks about the reporting results for the first 2 years of the program. The top bar represents the reporting results from 2022 compliance year. I'm not going to go in the details of this, but this is what I presented to this group in November. That's the only data we had available at that time, but it's here for comparison purposes. So you can see how the reporting results look for 2023. But basically, this bar represents the total, based on the reports we received, the total number of WARE points that were earned. And then the shaded areas within the bar are the different actions, the categories of actions that the warehouse operators took to comply with the rule. So when you look at 2023, you'll see that 53% of these WARE points were earned by zero emission yard hostler usage, and so on. So these are mitigation fee points is something to point out here. This represents a very small percentage of the overall actions that they took to comply with the rule. The reason that bar is so much higher or greater in 2023 than 2022 was in 2022, we just had the phase 1 facilities reporting to us. And then in 2023, we not only have phase 1 reporting to us, but phase 2 came into the rule at that time. So in 2024, we expect this bar to be even higher. So this kind of talks about the points that were earned and the menu items in the rule that they took to comply with the rule. Next slide, please. So, the rule works on a menu-based system, providing options to a warehouse operator. If they select those options, they implement them, they earn points to meet a compliance obligation. This is kind of the real world impact of those actions that they took. So if you look at the graph to the left, you'll see these are the total NOx emissions reduced from the actions that they took in 2021. Those were the early actions. In 2022, which was the phase 1 operators reporting to us. And then in 2023, which is the phase 1 and phase 2. So in 2023, in totality, we're looking at about 1.2 tons per day reduced of NOx. And then the shaded areas within the bar represent the same color coding for the menu items that I used on the previous slide. So as you can see, the bulk of the emission reductions are coming from zero emission yard hostler usage, followed by near zero and zero emission truck visits. And basically there's a small sliver in here for some of the warehouse operators did rely on solar panel installations and usage to earn WARE points. And then the chart to the right is the diesel particulate matter emissions reduced from these actions. And one thing to point out here is these benefits that we're seeing are aligned with what we were expecting from the rule based on, when we prepared the analysis for the rule, this is what we were anticipating in terms of benefits. So it's nice to see that that's aligned together as we move forward. And in 2024, we expect even greater benefits from the rule when all the warehouses are phased in. Next slide, please. So this slide shows all of the zero emissions actions that were used by operators to comply with the rule. We provide this information here. This information receives a lot of public interest, and we basically update this as we go, as reports come in. I know there's a lot of information here, but it's very telling. We hope as time goes on, we're going to see a scaling up of all of this, all of these zero emission actions here. But one thing I can call your attention, I can highlight, for example, if you look towards the middle of the table, you'll see zero emission hostler acquisitions. So based on the reporting so far, 189 of these units were acquired at 96 different facilities. This is pretty neat to see that the counterpart for zero emission yard hostlers are diesel fueled hostlers. So it's nice to see this kind of acquisition of these for the warehouse role, because these are units that are operated at the warehouse facility, providing direct emission reduction benefits at the facility. And what's unique about this rule is the warehouse operators can earn WARE points for acquiring the unit, but also for putting it in use over time. So if you scroll down the second row from the bottom, you'll see for zero emission yard hostler usage, about 1.7 million hours were accumulated by these units at 130 facilities. So what this tells us is that, the acquisition occurred at 96 facilities, but the usage at 130 facilities. So that difference there is some additional yard hostlers that are being used. And we believe that's just some of these zero emission yard hostlers existed prior to the rule. But certainly there was a ramp up of this, technology to be used to comply with the rule. And one more thing to point out here, I think is interesting, is looking down to zero emission Class 8 truck visits. Warehouse operators reported in total about 240,000 visits across 185 different facilities. Although this number sounds high and we like to see it, it still only represents 1% of the total visits to warehouses. So we do want to see that number scaled up quickly with this rule. Next slide, please. So another actions on the WARE menu is installation and use of zero emission infrastructure. So what you see here is 84 stars on this map. These are all the locations of what we commonly refer to as zero emission fueling and charging infrastructure. The majority of them are EV chargers. I think only about 4 of them are TRU plugs. And then the blue stars are hydrogen fueling stations. So again, it's nicely distributed, but we do want to see a ramping up of these as we move along. Next slide, please. So I'm going to quickly go over what the reporting rates are. And I want to highlight, these are estimated reporting rates. We don't know the full universe of warehouses subject to the rule yet. So I'll call your attention to the graph here. If you look at you'll see 2 dashed outlines surrounding bars. What those dashed lines represent, or what we think is the estimated universe of warehouses that are subject to the rule. And so for example, in phase 1, we estimate that there's 1,039 warehouses. That information is just an approximation based on commercial real estate bases that are available to us. So this is what we base the reporting rates on. So if you look within that dashed outline, you'll see 3 vertical bars for phase 1. So the phase 1 facilities have completed 3 reports as of this date. So the first one in green is the initial site information report. The second bar in purple is their 2022 annual WARE report. And then the third bar in blue is the 2023 annual WARE report. So you could see that these reporting rates are not what you would want, right? We would love to see 100%, but we're getting there. And these percentages are slowly increasing with time. And then for phase two, the estimated population is about 1,059 warehouses we believe are subject to the rule. And there's no purple bar shown here for phase two, but that's because they didn't phase into the rule until 2023 for their first compliance year. So that's why there's no purple bar. They weren't required to submit a 2022 annual report, but they were for 2023. So I think, you know, what this is telling us is that we still have a lot of work to do. We are working very closely on outreach, compliance assistance, and enforcement to improve these rates. And I think I have a few more slides to talk about this soon. Next slide, please. So there's some good information here to share. This is also based on the reporting results. So what we see is that the warehouses that have reported to us are showing over compliance. So what this chart, these bar graphs show is that the reported wear points earned, the wear points that were earned based on the reports we received, far exceed what their compliance obligation was. So when you look at this chart, you'll see the first bar is phase one. Their compliance obligation for the operators that have reported to us is in purple, the purple box. It's about 50,000, I think, if my eyes don't deceive me. So the compliance obligations in the purple box, but the rest of that box is all excess wear points that they earned for that compliance year. So for phase one in 2022, they earned well over 247,000 points when their compliance obligation was only 50,000 points. So that tells us these wear points that they earn in excess of their compliance obligation can be banked for future use, but it still represents actions that they took in 2022. So this is a really positive message here. We're seeing a similar trend with the phase one facilities in 2023. And then the gray box is what we're seeing with the phase two facilities, which started reporting to us for the 2023 compliance year. So their compliance obligation was much lower. They earned way more points than they were required to do. And those points will be banked, you know, for their purposes for future compliance. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have been taking a more robust focus on enforcement now. And the way this kind of got initiated is in September 2023, we issued a compliance advisory. This was after years of outreach and you know, various outreach efforts that we've taken to inform warehouse operators of this rule. So we issued a compliance advisory that went out to over 5,000 addresses, including owners and operators. We've conducted over 800 in-person site visits to warehouse facilities. As of this date, we've issued about 200 NOVs to entities that have not yet submitted reports to us. The next steps are just continuing with this effort. We're trying to provide as much compliance assistance and outreach as we can to bring these facilities into compliance. And next slide, please. So what the chart to the left kind of goes through the overall process that we're taking. So the inspector goes out, visits the facility. We typically get a response from the stakeholder. They need compliance assistance. Our WARE program implementation team responds to those inquiries, gives the assistance needed, and then the stakeholders submit their reports. What's shown here is just the level of inquiries that we get, both calls and emails. This kind of shows you what happened in real time leading up to the January date. You see a spike in January that could be because that was a major reporting deadline for the 2023 compliance year. But we are averaging about 50 to 100 emails and calls per week. So it's a lot, and we do get back to everyone that reaches out to us in a timely fashion. So finally, we're going to continue our enforcement efforts with a focus on the phase 1 and 2 non-reporters. We're going to target our outreach right now for phase 3. These are the operators that are being phased in this year. We're going to continue to review and audit the reported information coming in. That process is very time consuming, but important. We're reaching out to the entities who submitted reports to us, asking for records to verify the information that they gave us. We're making enhancements to the WarePOB. That's the main reporting system used by the owners and operators to comply with the rule. And we are gearing up for our next annual report for this program. We'll have additional information to share probably in the fall of this year. So thank you for your time and patience. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. White, for that report. Before I ask for any questions from committee members, I want to acknowledge that we did have 4 members join us, and that's Kareem joined us, Dr. Benson, Suzanne, and Rafael. We have 4 members that joined us. So we are missing 3 more to have quorum, but just want to give us a quick status where we're at. With that, any questions for Ms. White from the committee members? Kareem?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Salash. Appreciate it.
Whoa.
All right. First of all, thank you for the level of detail in your report. Obviously, there's great thought brought into this. The numbers that you're showing are very impressive. It's something that, from my understanding, hasn't been done for us. So it's great to see that level of display of rigor into that. I'm seeing a level of non-compliance. That's obviously you're capturing in your data. Is there any strategies that you're utilizing per region or things of that sort where you're working with different agencies to kind of bring those folks into compliance? And if so, what level of partnerships are you building to kind of put us in that direction to make it not as, we're coming to shut you down? The policy is written in a certain way, but I'm trying to understand it from perspective of a business owner to how we could guide them into it as opposed to, strong arm them into it, so to say.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of resources available. It's not just through emails and calls. We have a lot of very short videos that we put on our website to really assist people in understanding the mechanics of the rule, if you will.
Okay.
The team is fantastic. I mean, they're just great at responding. We also are coordinating internally with different divisions. I have my management team here. So we are really working all together to help any entity that reaches out to us. We also, attend various meetings upon request to go out and talk to communities about the program. We're part of the 617 process. The SWARE program gives frequent updates to those communities as well.
I guess, are you doing warehouse visits? Are you meeting them at the front door? If so, what level of, obviously you have a fully staffed team. Are you visiting them daily? Like what level? I guess I'm trying to understand it from a level of how fast we're moving and how slow. Obviously it takes time to do these kind of things.
I won't beat around the bush. It's a heavy lift. It's a lot of, there's about we estimate about 3,400 warehouses, facilities that are subject to the rule. There are a lot of people to get out to, but we are doing in-person site visits once a week. I think we tackle about 100 in-person site visits. So of course, this Monday is a holiday. It's probably not going to work out, but we are just incrementally getting there one week at a time to bring facilities into compliance.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for answering that. My other questions about the alternative technology pathway, I didn't see any data on that. Are you able to provide any prospects or any progress that's been made on kind of those discussions, or if you see any entities utilizing that pathway moving forward?
The alternative, what did you, I'm sorry,
like an
alternative compliance?
Yes, alternative compliance. There's another pathway that.
Oh, a customware plan? Is that what you're thinking of? Okay, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. So there is an option in the rule for what we call a custom wear plan. So if the operator, wants to look for any actions or items outside of what's dictated by our wear menu in the rule, they can submit a custom wear plan to us. We did approve 3 custom wear plans to very recently for the same entity. This would be for an offsite charging depot location. And I can refer you to the website where you can take a look at the plan for that. But that is very recent.
Okay.
And we're getting a lot of interest for different types of technologies that we're looking at right now. We received one more custom plan this year, but so far, I think we're going to see more next year is what I'm coming to say.
Yeah.
We saw one this year. 3 last year, but I do think more are coming. We're holding a lot of meetings with these entities that are interested in helping these operators comply with the rule through these custom wear plans.
Okay. Those are my questions. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty. Any other questions from committee members? Okay.
Thank you very much for your work with this. Little off the topic, but still important with the warehouses. Truck idling times and truck idling, do we monitor that? Do we have agreements with any of these warehouses that's related to our work with them? And is there any technology that they're using or that's available to help with the pollution from truck idling?
I can start it. Okay, so the California Resources Board, I think California Resources Board, I believe are primarily responsible for truck idling emissions. We've been working with them, especially through the AB 617 program to try and I know in one community, we worked with ARB to put up additional signs, hoping that signage will help enforce the truck idling restrictions that are in place through the state. I don't know if there's anything else to add.
Maybe I can add a little bit. Ian McMillan, I'm Assistant Deputy for the Planning Division. So CARB does have the rule for anti-idling, but all newer trucks now have to be sort of clean idle as of 2023, that they all have less idling than they've had in the past. That said, we do have the ability to enforce CARB's rule on anti-idling, and that's part of AB 617. There's been a big focus on idling in some communities. But I think we have seen that there are some jurisdictions, some cities will encourage or even require at times to put more signage up and to try to really discourage that idling at these warehouses. As part of our rule, and idling is not really a part of our rule so much. It's looking at kind of larger changes, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. El Hassan. Ana Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wanted to piggyback on my colleague's comment. I guess, this is a hard one because so there's a warehouse being built right in front of my house. I'm 100 feet away from it. And in the last 3 months, as they're building the warehouse, we were told during the planning process that there would only be no more than 40 trucks a day. Well, one day there was 120 trucks idling over 20 minutes in front of my house. And since then, my son has had 5 episodes of bronchitis and asthma attacks. With all that said, I do understand that CARB does oversee the idling rules and everything, but as I guess to have warehouse developers comply or operators comply with the ISR during this planning process before the city or the county approves these types of warehouses, I feel like there has to be some type of like connection or communication during this planning process. I understand that you guys send letters and you respond to EIRs and MNDs and all of that. However, in reference to what you mentioned about the signage, can this be something that is required or part of the ISR during this planning process to have these warehouses put the signage during the construction phase and also the operating phase? So then I guess we can work with the city as community members or as organizations and then have CARB, oversee these activities. But I feel like there's somewhere in that planning process before these are approved, there has to be more communication with AQMD and the agency before they approve these warehouses. Because I feel like a letter is not enough, right? And so in order to comply with the ISR and then the self-monitoring and all of that, I feel like we need to go a step more to like really have these folks comply, because that's terrible. Like 120 trucks in one day. And they even parked there at 3 in the morning, and now they're violating construction ordinances from the city. And here I am being a Karen trying to say, hey, you guys are violating our city ordinance. You can't construct during these hours. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but I feel like there has to be better communication with the agencies during the planning processes for the newer ones, right? Now, we have the existing ones. What are we doing to educate? Maybe that's what it needs, right? Education and collaboration from CARB, from AQMD, from other agencies, so we can do better education with these warehouse developers or operators to understand, like, hey, we mean business. Like, we need to protect the health of our community, period. And then on the other side of the solar, we've been hearing conversations through Edison that I guess there's a hard time to, as we push developers to provide solar rooftops, Edison is pushing back and saying, well, there's this net metering, there's this, these other regulations from PUC, and now they can't provide the solar in order to provide the charging units for the trucks, for other equipment and stuff, because Edison and PUC is now like creating barriers for warehouse developers to actually put in solar. So has there been any conversations through that too? Because as we're trying to get to these goals to achieve, cleaner trucks and cleaner equipment, there's this barrier with Edison now in PUC with the net metering and all of that, and battery storage and everything. And so if we're all working in silos through these agencies, I feel like it's going to take so much longer to get to the goals that we're trying to get, right? So that's it.
Well, I was gonna, yeah, I think one of the things, as Ian mentioned, like this rule is specific to warehouse facilities, existing warehouse facilities. It does not at all get involved in the planning process or the approval process for the facility. We do work with cities. We've been, mostly through flyers. We bring to their council meetings. Sometimes the city will reach out to us and we coordinate with them on the program. But this rule doesn't really get into those issues that you're referring to. Those are valid concerns. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think a very understandable concern that you're raising. I mean, who wants 120 trucks idling right in front of their house? 100 trucks, right? I mean, it's an understandable concern. I think, as you know, the cities and the counties, they're the land use agencies. They're the ones that designate where truck parking is or where truck routes are, and they're the land use agency. To the extent that, of course, as always, if you have an air quality complaint and you think that there's a smoking vehicles or anything like that that's going on, you can give us a call, 1-800-CUT-SMOG. CARB's number, I think, is 1-800-END-SMOG. And there's that kind of enforcement can happen. I don't know if that's going to quite get at the issue that you're talking about. I think what we've seen is that there's been a lot of truck idling sweeps that either our agency or CARB has done. I think there's various web data that's out there on that. And I think from the data that I've seen on that, and most of the data I've seen is that it's a pretty high compliance rate, which doesn't mean that it's not an issue, because if you have 120 vehicles that are compliant, there's still maybe a concern, but I think that gets back to the land use. What is that land use issue? So I think, to Vicky's point, that there's been a lot of, we're trying to coordinate with the cities and the counties to share that information about this, and that's sometimes through the CEQA process. So I think, you bring up a good point about that education and outreach, and I think we do try to do that. If people see other opportunities to do more of that, hey, let's talk about doing some more of that for sure. I wanted to get to your second point too, really quick, on the infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge, huge issue, right? I think everybody sees it. This rule is one of the very first ones that I think we're aware of, if not the first one, that really puts in a framework for including infrastructure as part of these, including retrofitting, right, and charging and solar, and to how to do that. This is not the only tool to do that. It can't be the only tool. There's a lot of other coordination that has to happen. We're doing that, reaching out to the utilities. It's not just SCE, it's Public Utilities Commission, all the other local publicly owned utilities as well. So there's a lot of that coordination that needs to happen. We're pretty interested in that. Good points.
Thank you. We have one last committee question from Rafael. And maybe one last one, a half one from Karim. Go ahead, Rafael.
Thank you. Great comments, Anna. And well,
thought out and I loved it. So just kind of abutting to some of the I guess the topics and whatnot, because I understand that, you know, the enforcement staff and compliance staff is the one that's actually going out into doing these inspections and whatnot. And it just kind of brought up, you know, the idea that, you know, I guess, you know, was there an increase in compliance staff? Or is this just kind of a part of, you know, a lot of their normal day-to-day work as they're, you know, going through their checklists and various warehouses and other, you know, duties and whatnot, because it's a lot to add to existing work, right? If you don't have added staff. So, you know, I could see how it's kind of stretching and wearing thin a lot of the existing resources that we currently have. However, you know, I know there has been outreach. I know since, you know, part of my quote unquote day job is, you know, working with the city of Los Angeles. I know our industrial waste division has reached out to AQMD and try to partner with doing some sort of like kind of dual inspection type thing, where while we have a army of, you know, inspectors going out and inspecting various industrial waste facilities within the city, I know there's been a little bit of cross training that happened years ago, but kind of dropped by the wayside. And so I would encourage maybe outreaching to some of these partnering agencies in order to get increased warehouse while, you know, they're doing their normal duties, you know, in terms of like industrial waste management. They could easily just say, hey, look, you know, heads up, and just make the warehouse aware of, you know, this new rule and whatnot, and just kind of spreading the word. And if they see any type of egregious, you know, violations or anything else like that, they can go ahead and report those to AQMD directly. But I think there was pushback, if you will. So again, doing that and going back to, you know, the plan check side of the house for these new projects that are currently, you know, being developed. I think one of the suggestions that I had earlier in regards to this, you know, these new rules implementation or whatnot, is getting with the city planning and actually having a checkbox, you know, while, for instance, the plans going through building and safety, you know, because we have them, you know, with ours, and we're trying to get on building and safety as much as possible, you know, to make sure that they're checking all the boxes, if you will. There should be a checkbox sign off for AQMD in the planning stages for these warehouses. And then there should be, you know, to Anna's point, coverage during the construction process as well. And there should be maybe some stipulation or rules or something stated within the permit conditions as they're starting to go through the application process and whatnot, that there should be a requirement through the construction phase, and not only just for when the project has been completed. That would avoid a lot of the situations that Anna is describing, where you have lots of end dumps and grading trucks that are doing the hallways of the various sites, dirt and soil and whatnot. And then you have a bunch of concrete trucks that are just kind of staged. And a lot of these concrete trucks may not be, you know, owned by that particular company. They could be contracts or contractors or privately, you know, as is most of the case. And so some of those vehicles may not be clean idle. And we know that, you know, we've all been by construction projects where you have like an army of trucks just lined up waiting for the site to open. And then they're waiting for the site to do their excavation and whatnot. So, you know, it tends to beg the difference. The other thing, and I'll make this other point brief. Again, I think if we can really target like some of the AB 617 communities, I know there was a lot of partnership and whatnot that you mentioned, you know, going forth with these communities because they're the most heavily impacted. Maybe we you could work with the cities within the AB 617 communities and saying, hey, we've identified these as AB 617 communities, and maybe there's like a special, little something that they put on the reviews. And maybe there needs to be a rule amendment or something adopted by, the board or something like that in designating the AB 617 communities as a special development area that may allow for that little extra something to be placed on the permit conditions. The other thing, I think Dr. Beeson, was it? Oh, no, it was Dr. Al Hassan had mentioned about the idling and whatnot. One of the things, so last night we had an AB 617 community steering committee meeting with, and CARB was present at the meeting. And it was really nice to understand that CARB has been really putting a lot of rules and efforts forward in mitigating a lot of the, things that the AB 617 community has been really, voicing and saying, hey, AQMD, why haven't you been doing this? But thankfully, CARB on their side, because they deal with the transportation side of the house as opposed to the stationary source emissions, has been doing a lot of truck sweeps and inspections and a lot of things. I'm hoping that, again, I've always been asking for, from our steering committee, or at least the AB 617 program by AQMD, is to actually get a peaks system so that AQMD can facilitate, some sort of studies on an ongoing basis to address some of these warehouse issues where you have 120 trucks just lined up, set up the peak system right there along with the ALPS. And, if you're finding that, these trucks that are flowing in and out of these sites into these, various communities, if they're in violation, you got their license plate, you got their relevant data through the peak system. You send them a notice of violation and off you go. And at least it just kind of puts it out there that, hey, if you're going to have a large project being developed, you're going to be subject to all the regulations that you're supposed to comply with. And this is the mechanism in which we're going to enforce that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ralph. Just a couple quick responses. One on the staffing side. So I can say on the implementation side, Vicky's heading up a new team that didn't exist before, looking at warehouse implementation, and that's sort of on the front end to get warehouses in, the training, the outreach, getting them into the system, working with them, that customer service, but sort of the very first stage of compliance. But there's obviously very close coordination that we have to do with our enforcement arm as well, right? And there's a lot of that work there to make sure that kind of the whole system is working together, and that's going really well. Of course, we're always looking at resources and all that like any program, right? So that will continue. I did want to touch on your plan check discussion, and I'm pretty familiar with that process. I did CEQA for quite a while, understand what that looks like. There are limits with what AQMD can do when it comes to these kinds of sources. We are actually prohibited under state law from having any role when it comes to permitting these kinds of facilities as part of indirect sources or any kind of land use decision. So we actually can't be part of that process. It doesn't mean we can't provide guidance, like Anna mentioned, on letters or CEQA guidance, or weighing in on that. And it doesn't prevent cities and counties from imposing requirements if they so choose. But we can't have an explicit role in that as far as a sign off, check mark, or anything like that. That's different from our own permitting authority, but under indirect sources. I don't know if most folks know that. That's why I wanted to reflect that here.
Yeah, so it's the question of, because of the requirement for, compliance on these warehouses, whether new or existing, is there so for instance, if I was I can't remember the toxic number. If I was, a stationary source and I had to have an AQMD application that I had to submit it, there is like a construction and then an ongoing, right? Conditions. While, they can't, like AQMD can't prohibit the land use or dictate any type of, the permitting and stuff, because that's the responsibility of the city. The question becomes is, again, why couldn't, one, I guess, is there permitting in regards to compliance for this particular rule at all? And so if there's not, then maybe, again, it's just making the construction of these sites during their plan check aware of the existence of this rule, and that they have to comply even during construction. So maybe it's not something that is a sign off per se, but it's actually just a notification and making them aware. So that way they can't say, oh, we never knew about this rule until they're in operation, but instead they're made aware immediately through the building and safety of each of these agencies and cities.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one last committee question and then we'll go into public comment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it for giving me another bite at the apple. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback. So there's a pretty cool tool Dr. McCarthy put together to kind of analyze warehouses within the region. So I'm kind of trying to figure out what level of communication platforms or portals are going to be building out to kind of showcase all of this data. Power BI, I mean, just even having a mapping tool, ArcGIS, and kind of understanding the different mechanisms in place to kind of make it a little bit more easier to grab. So it makes partnering better, it makes working with these entities better. So how there's been any discussions of that? I know we're building the plane in the sky. I'm just trying to, I know you're beefing up your team. So do you have any vision for something of that sort?
Yeah, we definitely do. We have an approach to, basically post all of the warehouse reporting data on the Find tool here at AQMD. So that would be a way of accessing this information to see, which reports have been submitted, whether or not there are any compliance issues.
Okay.
That is a path that we're pursuing right now. We've had several public workshops on it. We need to probably schedule another one, gear up for another one this year.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because I know there's been entities that have paid their way by fee to come into compliance. So is there a spending plan associated with that? And I guess, are you creating grant systems? I mean, so I'm going down that track. I don't mean to kind of be too pushy, but I guess there's going to be a funding mechanism to kind of facilitate some of these ideas.
Yes, I think what you're referring to is the mitigation fee program.
Yes.
So that is one of the options a warehouse operator can use to purchase points. They can purchase points. Those funds then go into a special revenue fund here that will, in turn, those monies will be used to fund projects in those communities. That is the purpose of that program, and it's specifically focused on zero emission trucks and supporting infrastructure in those communities where those warehouses paid us the funds. That program is still in the process of being set up. Our Technology Advancement Office is the lead on that program. And there will be some sort of public process to weigh in on how that program gets set up and how the funds are spent.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the responses.
Thank you, fellow committee members. We're going to end this item with public comment. Is there anyone in the audience with public comment? Seeing none, we do have one person online, and we'll ask for Bobby Joe. And this is just public comment, so there's no discussion. Bobby, are you there? And we're gonna unmute.
There we go.
Okay, go ahead, Bobby.
Hello, good afternoon. Bobby Joe Chavarria with the Sierra Club Clean Transportation for All campaign. And thank you so much for this presentation and really, I would say, the good news of over compliance. I think it's testimony to the fact that setting this ISR really gave guidance and a path forward for industry to figure out some of the technical questions and actually just start making the investments and really and asking folks to push on the zero emission technologies and really getting that implemented. So I think that was the goal all along. And so it's really evident that we're just getting started on the possibility of really helping to clean up these magnets of pollution like warehouses. Speaking to some of the questions and comments that the committee members put forward, one of the concerns I think is during that development process. So thank you, Ian, for kind of clarifying that the AQMD has a tough role. But I think maybe some guidance would be really helpful for local municipalities because like Anna, in my community, just down the street from my son's school, this year were 2 warehouses under construction, not that far away, which also changed, made the city have to address truck routes that were not under consideration before. But now that we have these 2 new warehouses right next to the school, they were, they were there interfering sort of with morning traffic, as well as passing by the school rather than going on the designated truck routes away from the school. So yeah, some guidance would be helpful there, just because during the building process, community is severely disrupted with these trucks and all that movement. Speaking to the WARE program itself, one and you all touched on it a little bit with the mitigation fees, and as did one of the committee members. It might make sense for monitoring and compliance of maybe some community grants, especially in the heavily impacted communities, to help with monitoring, to help with even just alerting. Here's a project that's happening. Here, here's some reporting. Is there a way to start the reporting process as soon as things are moving forward on, with truck trips, et cetera. And finally, I will just ask really quick on the vacancy rates and what we're seeing there as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Lisa has confirmed there's no one else online for public comment, so we're going to end public comment on this item. On that note, thank you for this item. Again, Ms. White, thank you for your presentation. Now we'll go on to item 5, and as we have acknowledged, our chair now, Veronica Padilla Campos, and my colleague on AQMD is here, so she will continue chairing. She will now take over the meeting as our chair and take it along. And I don't get to introduce our fabulous staff. I'll let you do our Dr. Solis. So go ahead.
Wait, Dr. Solis.
Anissa.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Mayor Solache, for taking over. I apologize for being late. I think that holiday traffic is real. We'll see what it looks like when we leave here. But it's good to be back. And I am happy to introduce our next presentation for Assembly Bill 617 Implementation Update. Dr. Johnson, please.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be in space with members of the EJAC group to provide an update on Assembly Bill 617 overview. As was mentioned, my name is Dr. Anissa Sessaher Johnson. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion with Community Air Programs. I've been here just a little bit over 3.5 years, and the Community Air Programs has been a part of my division for about the last year. Next slide, please. So as we approach this work, you'll see here one of the reasons why Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Community Air Programs was transitioned into Community Air Programs together is to ensure that we are approaching it through a DEI-focused framework. Again, our mission is to clean the air and protect the health of all residents through practical and innovative strategies. AB 617 is one of those, a very big, huge portion of one of those practical and innovative strategies. And so the very 3 things of our mission we are doing within the AB 617 program. So achieving clean air standards by enhancing public education and equitable treatment for all communities, and then by operating efficiently and transparently, as you will see in this presentation, how we are adapting our approaches with the community air programs. Next slide, please. So just in the past year, when the program came under diversity, equity, inclusion, this is pretty much what our approach has been. We physically created a space for the staff to work together for DI with community air programs. We documented our existing processes, kind of created a skills inventory, and developed professional goals for the staff members who are working on this program. We also worked on creating some workflows so that we can integrate our staff. We started to develop and define roles and responsibilities, fostering collaboration with CARB, but also with different regional teams, organizations, companies, and so forth. We also then worked on really establishing collaborative projects between our DEI and community air programs team. One of those is called C3PO. I'll get into that a little bit more. I know the folks here are science folks, so I try to always do something that has a little bit of science in there, right? So we also have a JEDI program and a C3PO. I know what works. May the 4th. Okay, be with you. And so we also, I think it's very important in again, doing diversity, equity, inclusion programs that we not talk about how it feels, right? Oh, it feels good to do these programs. We need to have some true metrics of success, indicators of success. And so we've been really purposefully defining those metrics of success as we do these collaborative programs. We've been facilitating cross-training between not just internally within our own agency, but also externally with other agencies and other air quality management districts. And then even just a couple days ago, we had a strategic planning meeting to really look at our SERP implementation and outreach efforts for the upcoming year so that we can be better at proactive and not so much the reactive. So next slide, please. So for those of you who may not be aware, just a quick overview of AB 617 signed into law July 26, 2017. It really is investing resources and local actions to reduce air pollution in the communities that have been disproportionately impacted by air pollution. I'm not telling y'all anything that you don't know, just to know that these are communities that have histories of redlining, distrust in the government. They don't always welcome our involvement. And so to truly build trust, we are having to make purposeful and mindful efforts to be able to get the communities to work with us because there is so much a history of distrust. And so what that looks like, again, is not talking about feelings, but really coming up with specific plans. We have two of those plans, our SERP, which are our community emissions reduction plans, and then our community air monitoring plans, our CAMPs. We're looking at clean technology investments. As Ian and Vicki have mentioned, a lot of rules involving best available retrofit control technology, or BART, and then just providing easier access to emissions data, communicating the science to people are really critical components to our AB 617 program. Next slide, please. So, you know, I arrived here 3.5 years ago. The program was already in play. I will tell you that I really begged to be a part of this program. I am a resident of Paramount, California. You my person. And so I have lived and breathed the air. My children are living and breathing the air, so I believe in this program. And so it is very personal to me. Another aside is that I used to live in Seattle, which people will arguably say is one of the rainiest places on the planet. Well, not the rainforest, but certainly in the continental US. And I came back home. I'm from Inglewood originally. I came back home from Seattle to get a vitamin D deficiency. Right? My kid who grew up in Seattle got asthma after being here for 3 months. And so whereas I was working in higher education, I guess I got awakened when they say woke. I was like, oh, no, we got to do something about this. And so I moved from higher education to working here, still doing diversity, equity, inclusion work, but it was really important. So this work is personal. So when folks said, don't take it personal, I do. It's personal. I'm living in the neighborhoods and I want to make sure that I'm making it better for our children, right? You know, that whole thing about we didn't inherit it, where it's on loan. for our children. So I do this work because I am passionate about it. I work with a great team of people who are passionate about this. And so when we talk about AB 617 in our designated communities, we have 6 of the 19 across the state within our South Coast AQMD region. But in those 19 that the state have, there's 2 that are still kind of just coming up. They're just now developing their SERPs. And so we are 6 of really 17, so which means more than a third are in our region. And we have been working with them since year 1. And so they represent these different communities. So when you see year 1, that means that they started at the very beginning of the program, and there's been a commitment of a 5-year plan to work with these communities. That is a very real thing because we're coming up on year 5. And we're dealing with a lot of feelings in our communities. Okay, so what's going to happen after year 5? Are you ready to leave us? Are you ready to go? What's going to happen? And so we're talking about what does that mean? So these are all the different designated communities that we have in our particular region and that we've been working on and working with and will continue to work with. Next slide, please. So what's coming up next in the presentation, we'll describe to you a little bit about the different elements and strategies that we have been employing with our AB 617 program. So the air monitoring, focused enforcement, how we've been working with interagent collaborations, a little bit about our incentive programs, what we've been doing for rules and regulations, and then also public information and outreach. These are all the strategies in which we are employing to be able to achieve success. So next slide, please. And I will also say that I have a great deal of team folks behind me so that if there's real details, we can go into it with them. So I cannot do it without them, literally this too. So, and I'm getting old, so I got to put my glasses on. All right, so in our air monitoring, we're talking about different approach that involves fixed monitoring. So that would be air quality sensor networks. That's talking about tools and different accepted guidance methods. We're talking about mobile monitoring. And these are all different approaches in which our team is employing. One second. Thank you. So one of those things that we have done, excuse me, whoops. Okay, sorry, my apologies. So one of the ways the implementation highlights is that we have had auto body and metal processing facilities. So you've seen that we conducted 52 mobile measurements, about 240 hours of surveys in both just the East LA and SELA communities. They identified areas and facilities for enhanced inspections and did follow-up monitoring. For pesticides, we worked with CARB and coordinated with them a 13-week-long pesticide sampling and analysis at 3 different sites. For oil tankers and wells, we conducted 47 mobile measurements and identified 34 oil well leaks for follow-up inspections and air monitoring in the Wilmington, Carson, West Long Beach community. And approximately 20 of those inspections resulted in notice of violations. And so this has been since 2019 up until the present time. We also, of the sweeps, 4,255 sweeps, there was 119 notice of violations issued. And so in the conducted inspections of the auto body shops and metal processing, rendering, and waste transfer facilities, 23 NOVs, all of which have been resolved. There was 51 inspections of oil well facilities identified by the monitoring as having elevated emissions, resulting in 21 NOVs. We conducted 13 inspections of the concrete batch plant facilities, resulting in 4 notices to comply. And then we have conducted inspections of metal processing and rendering facilities, resulting in 9 NOVs, all of which have been resolved. Next slide, please. There's also been focused enforcement, and when did I bring? Can I get another one, maybe? Thanks. How about that? Yeah, there we go. So focused enforcement looks like this truck idling sweeps. upper burn programs, farm wells, and auto body and metal processing facilities. Why are you gonna blame it on me? You're blaming it on me? Okay, that's all right. I received that. So those numbers in the first quarter, updated the quarter of 2024, we've done 4,350 sweeps, 121 notice of violations issued. We have also done 488 open burn active. There's been 488 open burn activities from 2019 to 2023. That has been 136 complaints and 4 NOVs. And so the purpose of this is to saying that we're not just kind of talking at things, we're actually in the field. What I really enjoy so much about working with AB 617 is it requires our entire agency to work together. So we're not siloed. Enforcement is working with monitoring, is working with engineering and permitting. Everybody's working together to achieve the focused enforcement. Next slide. Another critical component of our program is our AB 617 incentive funding. You can see here, you see here where it says community identified projects. That involves what we call participatory budgeting. So these are all of the different aspects of incentive fundings that the AB 617 program has been involved in. So zero emission trucks, zero emission infrastructure, ports and harbor crafts, locomotive, green spaces project, air filtration systems. One of the things that I think is a critical component, and again, I mentioned the transparent nature of this program, there needs to be an establishment of trust. And so what we call our participatory budgeting process is intensive and it's educational. It involves working with our communities. So when you see community identified projects, folks need to see the money gets spent in the ways in which they need it to be spent. So currently with our, I think it's our South LA community, it's probably been a year process to just work with community members. What is it that is important to you? How are you going to prioritize it? How much money needs to go to what? So truly engaging the community in this process is time consuming, but it's necessary. And it's critical because when people are involved in processes, they have more engagement. And that's what happens with our incentive funding. So you'll see all the different total emission reductions listed here, and then the total incentive funds distributed so far. Next slide. So ABC 617 incentive funding, so our project plans. So there's several different project plans that we have worked with. These are creating something where there was nothing. And so we are, as a year one community, as one of the first who have kind of implemented this program, one of the big statements that I make constantly is that we are driving a car that is getting built while it's on the road going 100 miles an hour. And so that's what we've been doing. And so the project plan is a critical component of that. So that means that we're working with creating infrastructure, working with businesses and industry to be able to come up with plans to be able to achieve. Our residential air filtration program currently is, actually they're accepting applications from residents. So the program is in play and we're actually in the community talking with folks about the residential air filtration. We have our truck loaner, which is currently evaluating proposals from vendors. One thing that I would like to elevate to you all, because I feel like this is an opportunity to be able to do it. We had our paving program for ECV and also our green spaces program. Whenever we go into spaces with folks, green spaces is something that people talk to us constantly about. Like it is so critical and so important for those people who take trees for granted or take greenery for granted. For those areas that don't have it, they don't know. And so there are people who really just, there's so much benefit to that. And we have had a couple of processes in which we've gotten no bids. we've gotten no bids. And so what I've cautioned our team is to really look at how we can improve this process, to improve the process, and why there is no bids. Like, so we're talking to folks who have expressed interest. You expressed interest. We've had bidders conference. I keep breaking it. It's. We'll go through all of them before I'm done. And so, so as we talk to our team, you know, we don't know why it is that we're not just trying to throw money at the problem or really look at the systemic issues that are going on with why are people not wanting to put money into these communities. We think we know why people don't want to put money into these communities. And so we're really trying to look at it through this DEI lens, and how we can dismantle some of these maybe systemic classism, infrastructure problems that are keeping businesses from being able to apply. We don't know, but we just know that this is a real deal, real world kind of issue. And so we're not shying away from it. We don't want there to be a narrative in which we say, oh, we can't spend the money. We can spend the money. We just have to figure out how can we get more of these businesses to be able to participate in these programs. And that's something that we are working on. So, but those are our different project plans, but I did want to just elevate those to you, that these are some areas of concern that we are working with. Next slide. So this slide is just an example of some of the adopted and amended South Coast AQMD rules. Some of them have already existed prior to AB 617, but as I mentioned before, with Vicki and Ian mentioned, sometimes the rules need to get adopted and amended, excuse me. And so these are just some examples. And then for those of you who got this report ahead of time, you can click in that one link to look at the South Coast rules that are currently under development. You can go and look at all of those, but these are just some examples that are specific to our AB 617 communities. Next slide, please. So one thing that has been talked about a little bit before was land use and water and all these different things that are out of our jurisdiction. One thing that I've noticed about the AB 617 program is that it is unique in that we are the ones who are showing up in the community. So we're showing up in the community in a way in that at minimum four times a year we have meetings in the community. And because the community members see us as having the privilege of access. Let me clarify, privilege of access. That means that we know people, we work with people, we have resources to be able to connect with them. And so people will come to us and say, okay, but you know how to get a hold of them. So it may not be your issue, but you still know them. So hook me up with the people. Talk to me, tell me, how do I navigate these systems? And so what we're finding with the AB 617 program is that there is still an expectation of us as an agency to help work with the other agencies. It is like a bare bones expectation. And so, okay, right. He's saying, yeah. And so there is that expectation because a community member don't know how to do that. They don't. So they expect more of us. And so we know that going in, that it is an expectation that we assist in the navigation. And so this program isn't just working internal. I just described to you all a lot of the internal aspects that work with our program within our South Coast AQMD. But to be successful, we also have to work outside of our agency. And so here are just some of the examples of the folks that we are working with, because as you all know, air pollution is at the intersection of many forms of environmental injustice. And so we need to be able to work with all the communities, all the agencies, and this is what we have to do to be successful. So it isn't just a matter of, what I found is that we know our jurisdiction, but sometimes people don't care about our jurisdiction. And so we have to figure out ways to work with folks, and that's what we're doing with our program. We're adapting our approach, I would say. Next slide, please. So these are just, again, another several of our key agencies that we've been working with. One thing that I would also just like to echo that we have been with our South LA, which is our most recent community that we developed a SERP with, we have what's called our community co-lead model. And so that's with PSRLA, Watts Clean Air and Energy Committee and Scope. And what's not listed on here also is what's the name of the organization again? The facilitators? Oh, Castillo. Is it Castillo? Castillo Partners, yes. We also work with Castillo Partners, which is an outside agency to help facilitate. And so we have several other, in some of our other communities, we have community facilitators, people who are in the community to be able to work with us because of, again, that history, that mistrust that might exist. And so with the South LA, we do have a outside facilitator that works with us to be able to address the real-time, real issues. And so as you all know, as we do this work, we get into so many of the hierarchy of oppressions. And so we oftentimes do need to have support to be able to have the conversations, because sometimes that is an impediment. Folks are feeling their feelings and feeling a certain kind of way. And when there are real-time social injustice issues that are happening in the world, it impacts what's going on in the community. And so in addition to having community co-leads, we also have some outside facilitators who kind of help us facilitate these conversations, because that kind of partnership is key to getting to the work. Next slide, please. So in terms of community engagement, you'll see that much of our focus, is to keep the focus centered on the community input. It is to connect, which means maintaining personal connections with community and stakeholders. What I mean to say too is we don't just tell the community something. Like, we have our CSC meetings, but that's just not it. We have to work with them and engage them in the work itself. And so as you were saying before, Raphael, right? The truck routes. So we are working right now across several communities to identify the truck routes that are of issue with people, right? And so we've created a video, we created a resource to be able to go out and say, okay, can you identify where the places that we should be looking at? And so a lot of this program, I get that air pollution has happened, but we are literally sometimes creating things from scratch at the very beginning. And so it isn't meant to disrespect anything that has come beforehand. It's really working with the communities where they're at. And for some people, it's like, we want to be heard. You want you to listen to us. And so we're doing a lot of data gathering, again, not as an excuse, but just real deal. This is what we're doing with our communities. When we say relevance, we're trying to really stay current with the community events. We're listening to the communities and finding out what is relevant, so that we can uplift what is going on in the community. That's how, at the core of what we're doing, is that community engagement. Next slide, please. So what that community engagement also looks like is our community steering committees. So they include both residents, community leaders, community organizations, governmental agencies, businesses, and industry. So the industry partners that are part of our CSCs are the businesses that are in the community, the industry that is in the community. It is not anyone from any other area, because it has to be relevant to that particular community steering committee. And that's where we have members from all across. I just checked in with the team as you all were talking and asking, do we have members of city councils or members of city organizations also a part of our CSCs? Almost everyone does, but we also know that sometimes someone leaves their job, and so then did they appoint someone new? So we're doing a lot of purposeful going back to our list, making sure that we have representatives, and we're doing onboarding for new members every single year. There's some CSCs are like, well, they weren't here in the beginning, we don't want them involved anymore, but we have to involve people constantly. It's, support isn't just saying, okay, it's only you people, we have to constantly be involving everyone. And so I just sent a message to our team, like, do we have members of city councils and city memberships on the CSCs? Maybe we should do some outreach. Can we ensure that happens? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, both saying about how we can, build those partnerships. That's another critical component of our CSC. The one thing that I will also tell you is that our CSC meetings, so we have them 4 times a year. But those are also just meetings in which we share information. One of the things that we have started to do is to send the information out. We're creating video resources. We're doing presentations ahead of time to allow that not everybody learns and wants to speak on an issue in the immediacy of it. So sometimes we have to send the data out ahead of time so that people can stew on it, and that the CSC meeting can be more dialogue and more back and forth and not just presentation of information. Another thing that is a really critical component of our CSC community engagement is our working team meetings. People are more involved when they have a say in that discussion. And so our working team meetings are involving community members, CSC members in the development of the information, the execution of that, and bringing more CSC members involved. That's a critical component of that. We work with all of our other agencies and also internally to do public workshops and to also do community tours. That 325 number is the number of public meetings we've had since the beginning of our AB 617 program. And I have to tell you, post-COVID, I'm not mad. They like the virtual. So we're continuing the virtual, but people have said to us, we want to see you in person too. Right? Next slide. So public information and outreach, what that has looked like is, like we said just a few seconds ago, we are doing a webcast. We are doing a lot of the Facebook live streaming so that people have access. We have a web page, we do newsletters, we do e-flyer infographics. We're doing brochures in multiple languages. We are paying attention to what are the needs of the particular communities. We're looking at the disaggregated data of the communities that we are a part of. No offense to anyone, but there are more languages in English and Spanish, and we're looking to see what more we need to do to involve people. So many of our communities that are AB 617 involve immigrant communities that speak multiple languages. And so we're finding out what do we need to do and what do we need to put in the language so that we can have more of a participant involvement. So we are definitely moving and paying attention to the translation interpretation needs of our communities. Next slide. So I mentioned to you all that I would get us here. So C3PO. C3PO is Critical Community Conversations for Purposeful Outreach. Yeah, I did that one. C3PO, right? And so what we have in our agency is obviously we're all knowing that we are in I wouldn't even say a post-COVID world because people are still getting COVID. So we are living in a COVID time. And we also are living at a time where in our agency in particular, we have 6 generations of employees. What that means is that we have people who are at 6 different generations. So we have people coming just out of college and people who are getting ready to retire. And so 50% of the people who are working in our agency have been here 5 years or less. And so we haven't been out in the community, not that much, at least within our division. I know other communities or other divisions are out a lot more than we are. But it was really important for us to do this work, to do the AB 617 work, that we be out in our communities. And so we wanted to engage in purposeful and meaningful meetings within our CSC. When folks come to the board meetings and they talk about, they're passionate about what's happening in their community, they're doing it here at the intersection of the 57 and the 60. We need to be out in the community hearing from them. And so on the 4th Wednesday of every month, our AB 617 go out into the community. We go into a CSC community and we ride buses, we take our cars, we have lunch in the restaurants that are in that neighborhood, we rent halls, we be in spaces, we take tours, we go to spaces with our CSC members and they tell us about their experiences. We find out what is going on truly from the ground up, what's on the ground. It's really an important component. When I first started in my position here, folks were like, what does DI mean? Does that mean that you're going to just replace all the folks? And it's like, no, it means that my job is to increase everyone's capacity, cultural competency to work with a diversifying community. Our agency, our areas that we live in don't look like they did 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago. And so to do this work, we need to know what the community is. We need to hear from them. And so what C3PO is us going out into the community and talking to them, being with them, hearing from them. So the fourth Wednesday of every month, our team goes out into the community. And currently we've worked with our CSCs. We still have to go out to ECV. We haven't been able to do that one yet, but that's the next one on our list. And then our hope is also next year to work with our consistently nominated communities. Those folks who aren't a part of the AB 617 program, but will soon, potentially be involved with CARB's Blueprint 2.0. So they might be getting community air grants, or they might be getting LSERP. So they might be something like that. And we want to work with them. So before we get into those actual contracts with folks, we want to find out what's going on in the community. And so we'll continue to do these C3POs throughout the duration of our time, because we feel like this is a critical component for community outreach, is to actually be in the community. Next slide, please. And that is my time. The one thing that I guess I would leave you all with is that we are currently in the process. We have we usually meet 4 times a year with our CSCs. In quarter 3, we're doing something new. We're going to have an all CSC meeting. That's going to be on Saturday, August 24th, here within our AQMD building here in Diamond Bar. It will be hybrid in that there will be some aspects of it that people will be able to participate in. It is our opportunity to share what we have done on all of our SERP implementation items. So it's to show the data, it's to show what we've done to reduce the emissions and so forth. But it'll also be an opportunity, because what we have heard from the community members is that they want to be in space with each other. They do not want to be isolated. They do not want to be alone. They don't want people turning folks against one another. They want to be in space with each other. And so what we want to do is to bring them together. So our intention for the Saturday, August 24th event is to bring all the CSC members together in space so that they can learn from each other, that we can talk best practices, we can look on how we can work together and moving forward and strategically plan. So you'll hear more about that coming forward. So we're in the stages of planning that now, but I'm very excited about that because I feel like it's very responsive to the needs that our community has asked of us. Workshops. Okay, cool. So that is it for my report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your report. This is sort of my jam, right? Community organizing and outreach. So I wonder if you're interested in maybe you and I, or you, myself and your team, taking a deeper dive in all this, because something that did catch my eye is you mentioned that there's some programs that are just not being sought out, and we're not clear why, and we really need to figure out what that is. Is it something we can do, or really who can we go to better understand what we can be doing to reach these folks? So if you're open to that, would love to sort of chat more with your team. Be great. Are there any? Oh, I saw a lot of hands. Or okay, start this way. I'm a little worried about that. I do have to leave at 2, so I'm gonna try to hang on as long as I can. So because you're gonna be long, I'm gonna start this way and go around, and then I may have to give it to you again, Mayor. So let's start, Doctor. I'm giving you a title now.
I
It's
know,
crazy.
it's not there
Mr.
yet.
Gongora.
It's coming. Finishing my
Right on.
dissertation this
Maybe
year.
I am foreseeing something.
Thank you. I just had to say kudos, great work. That was a lot, and it's a lot of great work, a lot of progress. Some of the things that I've been regularly concerned about, and it's just the way government operates, is that technical assistance isn't usually a part of our outreach efforts because it's very wonky and it's very hard to get into those spaces. So any kind of initiatives or any kind of support, and the reason why I bring that up is because we had a report last year where we saw the numbers in Orange County, the numbers in LA, and then the numbers in Inland Empire. We didn't have a high engagement or participation into the Moyer program. And so my assumption is that we don't have the organizational capacity or the access to the resources as these other entities. And usually when you look at things like COVID COVID, right? You had certain businesses that had capacity, had the banking, had the consultants to springboard into those kind of spaces. But I think in my region, and because I grew up there, sometimes we don't have that level of capacity. So if there is any technical assistance that could be as a part of your efforts, I think that's another way of broadening and incorporating businesses and industry, but also bringing in some of those ethnic-owned organizations that typically wouldn't be a part of those conversations. But beyond that, that's my only feedback. If there's anything you do in the Inland Empire, I'd love to be involved, love to bring as many people as possible. I think a lot of the times these programs don't get into the public conversation because they're very hard to communicate. But I think the fact that you're doing visits and you're meeting people where they're at is great. In the Coachella Valley, they do a thing called a promotor, where they go inside the community. They're going at doors. They have people that are from the community talking in the community. And so I love that you're building that kind of capacity to be able to do that. So just wanted to add that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Ms. Gonzalez, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I am very impressed. I am very happy with the work that you all have been doing. Of course, we are part of the San Bernardino Muscoy CSC, and I've learned a lot from it. But you brought up a very good point about involving our local leaders, because I will tell you, every time I go to a city council meeting or a county meeting or even water meetings, right? And we bring up issues like AB 617 or SB 1000 or these other laws and regulations that are in place now. They look at each other and they're like, what is that? And we're like, oh my gosh, like, how did they not know what AB 617 is, right? Especially in communities where we have the worst air quality, right? Like San Bernardino and Muscoy. And I almost wonder if, like, teaming up with nonprofits such as CCAJ, where I'm from, and doing more of that outreach to the local leaders. I know we've thought about doing some type of like candidate or local leader training, just to like give them a certificate like, yeah, you understand environmental justice, you understand the laws and regulations, let's work together to implement them and enforce them and all of that, because there is a lot of like of that. And I don't want to use the word ignorance, but these leaders don't know that these regulations exist. And so one of the things that CCAJ used to have was the Environmental Justice Task Force, where we used to bring entities like CARB and EPA and AQMD and DTSC and other agencies that regulate everything and anything related to environmental justice, whether it's water quality or air quality or healthy environment or soil quality. All those folks were together in a room and we were having these, like you said, working meetings, and they were very, very productive. And we're trying to bring that back. And I think starting with AB 617 would be like a great start model to start working with these agencies, because I also sit in the committee for the Interagency Equity Advisory Group with the CTC, which is transportation, and we're having these same conversations, right? Like, they're expanding freeways. Why are you expanding freeways if that's going to invite more traffic? Like, we're having these conversations, and there's no connection between the air agencies and the CTC, where there should be more collaboration to understand these issues impacting our communities that have been redlined, that have put freeways across poor communities, that have, done so much damage, and start even talking about reparations for these communities, right? And so I would love, as you're improving and you're adding more to this amazing work that you've done with the AQMD team. Thank you for that. I almost wonder if we should start bringing some of these agencies to and bring back that task force that we used to have, because I think having all those agencies in the room will really help solve a lot of these problems for sure. So thank you.
Can I ask a question? Was that a South Coast AQM force?
They were part of it. My understanding is that AQMD was kind of like a leader of it, and then EPA and DTSC collaboration. So that's my understanding, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Arredondo, please.
First of all, I want to, again, add kudos to the program that you set up in our valley, Coachella Valley. I'm from the Coachella Valley. I'm in a unique position because most of the elected, I think all the elected officials were once my students in school. So I know them very well. So I'm not really concerned that they don't attend the meetings, but because I can tell you that they're well informed about what's going on, because I get to talk to them all the time, and it's I guess an accident of history that I don't at one time, including Supervisor Manuel Perez, Victor Manuel Perez, was my student. He's also my little league baseball team. So I happen to have a very close personal relationship with all your elected officials and the councils from the different cities and communities, and even some of the members of ESV. So I'm speaking with a little bit of knowledge as far as, and not too much, but just a little bit, that everything is well. I've always complimented your staff. They do a wonderful job. I've been very happy working with them, going way back to the beginning. I know that for many years we've been trying to get attention called on that power plant that was in our valley. And the day has come when they basically are looking at, EPA is working on it, and they've shut it down for a while, and a lot of people are very happy. I know because a lot of the people in that area have issues with lung disease of different kinds, and also cancer. And I don't know if it's related to that, but they seem to think that it is. And so they were very happy about that. They really, we just talked among ourselves. We don't really should start relaying to your team and everybody else about how glad we are about all this that's happening in the valley. We're right there in the middle of giving out air filtration systems for the homes, which is really good. The people who have received them have been very pleased, and they will continue to work in that direction and trying to get everyone, because they're, I mean, even just yesterday, I had a young man, also one of my former students, who was telling me that he has a child that suffers a lot from lungs and has asthma, and some days it's pretty hard. And we get lately, and also that's the other thing AQMD is doing very good, is getting the word out about the alerts. We're getting them quite frequently now, and we've always had the issue, but now it's getting, the public is aware of it, and people are talking. So I've seen a lot of growth in the last 10 years as far as AQMD's involvement in our valley, and also with the 617 program is doing a fabulous job. Your staff is very dedicated. They're very passionate. I'm excited when I talk to them. They are doing their work out there, and so I hope it continues, and I'm sure it will with your leadership. And I just want to thank you, and I'll also verify to everyone here that yes, this is all very, very positive. And sometimes we do come across negative because we want to do more, but there's been a lot that has been accomplished up to now, but there's just so much more to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Yanes, ready?
Thank you.
Y'all ready?
So I've been involved in the AB 617 program before, I guess it was announced. So I've been participating since, and part of the year one CSC. And at times I feel like I'm the only one that attends that meeting, because it's been a learning curve. As with anything new, there has to be a trailblazer, and there has to be a test subject. And I feel that our year one community was that test subject, and there's been a lot of lessons learned, and subsequently many of the CSCs coming aboard, in the subsequent years had really benefited from the aches and pains that we've stumbled through. Just kind of, touching on some of the topics of conversation that you were mentioning in regards to the meeting and how to improve, dialogue and responsibilities of the district that the community feels in building a community trust. I think it's still a work in progress, of course. I think there's room for improvement. And, I would suggest the following. So, I know the district has acknowledged the fact that they come into the community steering committee meetings and they have a lot of presentation to present, a lot of information, that kind of stuff. But, there is a sense that the CSCs are so short in time. 2 hours to unpack an entire presentation. Staff has literally packed that entire time for the presentation. And sure, there is a dialogue and questions to be asked and answered throughout. However, it's still being preached to the community. And that's one of the reasons why I know our CSC in particular suffers from attendance. We only have 2 CSC members in attendance at yesterday's meeting. And, again, if it's not myself and another member, it's myself and maybe Marta, who's another community member. And again, it's difficult, it's frustrating. And when we're presented with the same information, that's where it gets really, really frustrating. And so I continue to ask staff to increase the number of meetings so that way we can actually have meaningful dialogue and actually work through, those issues, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be achieved that the community has identified since year 1 in our camp and our CERP. And it seems like nothing's, we're in year 6, okay? Our community is in year 6 of a 10-year program. And so right now, we're just only getting this air filtration. And the hope was the air filtration was going to roll out immediately after we had approved and voted on the budgeting 3 years ago. So that way, community can have an immediate relief while these other items were worked through, because we knew and understood that it was going to take some time. But unfortunately, here we are. And then when we were talking about one of our goals, for instance, zero truck emissions incentives, we were actually hoping to provide funding for the small operators that couldn't otherwise afford to invest in these clean zero emission trucks. Now, in the beginning, of course, we were only talking about big rigs because the technology hadn't improved. Now, since that time, they're still developing the big rigs, the batteries and whatnot. And I understand AQMD through the Moyer program is piloting, with 2 companies and, a fleet of 50 trucks apiece. And I'm hoping that's really going well. However, it's still, during, again, the implementation of this rent a loaner, truck program, it's really not what we wanted. And I had expressed that, but, again, it's fallen on deaf ears, because the original intent was to provide a difference that the cost of zero emission trucks versus a new diesel trucks, as these companies kind of shift from, their old trucks to a newer truck, to help offset some of that cost. And unfortunately, going to this rental thing, it's really disheartening, because now that we have these box trucks, which are really utilized within their community, because you see them running all over the street, now there's a large number of manufacturers like Isuzu and, you know, all these other major manufacturers of box trucks. They've rolled out zero emission trucks, but that would have been great to offer some funding for our local community members that and businesses that, you know, operate these things all over these, you know, residential streets. But unfortunately, you know, the program doesn't include that. And I think that's you know, that's a missed opportunity. And I think there's still time to correct that, right? We can go back, we could, you know, amend, you know, through the board motion or whatever, the RFP process, because I guess, you know, they're still, you know, sorting through the RFP process and all that other stuff. There is time, but we have to remain flexible that way because, you know, that limited amount of money that was allocated to our CSC, we were really hoping that, you know, we would make some meaningful efforts. And this all CSC meeting, you know, the hope, my hope is that we can all collaborate, we can all get together. So some of the things that Kareem was mentioning in regards to getting together because of the lack of technical expertise and whatnot. And I think had Mary been here, she would, you know, champion the same reasoning here of what I was, you know, I'm about to say is we have a lot of technical expertise, and there used to be a AB 617 technical advisory group meeting that during the implementation or development of the camp and SERP used in the year one communities used to meet regularly. It's a quarter. They were meeting quarterly, okay, while the CSEs were meeting monthly. Unfortunately, since, you know, everybody's already has their plan written, the technical advisory group no longer meets. However, you know, just like Kareem was mentioning, it would have been great had we had some technical expertise for the San Bernardino Muscoy area, which I've tried to participate in as much as I could in order to lend my technical expertise, you know, from a mechanical engineering standpoint and environmental engineering standpoint, you know, which is not an air quality, you know, engineer, but, you know, I've learned some things. And so my hope is that there could be workshops at that long all CSE meetings to help identify, because we're in year 6, we got 4 more to go. I need some meaningful like reduction. You know, it's one thing to monitor, it's another thing to get those like wins. And right now, we don't have those wins. We're actually regressing. You know, fortunately, you know, we have the state that has implemented a lot of new laws, regulation because of the various focus on greenhouse gas emissions, the reduction that we need to make, you know, all the various, you know, incentive that the federal government has moved forward with the implementation of and pushing forward the zero emission regulations and whatnot. All that stimulus money that the Biden administration has put forward and stuff, that is all great. And there's other programs and whatnot that were just announced, which, you know, the WARE program is kind of a part of that whole EPA grant that I think one of the staff attorneys is working on. Those kind of things, that's the kind of, you know, things we need and we're desperate for. And right now, you know, the presentation yesterday was, there was, and this was, we told them, that we told staff this a long time ago, but I guess now the mobile monitoring, you know, they were able to document, right? And actually have empirical data now, analysis, you know, because what we were saying, you know, is, hey, there's a low hanging fruit here. We have a really thick layer of black carbon all in our streets, everywhere we walk, you know, especially, you know, daily in our houses. That's what we're cleaning up. You know, when it rains, we see the black, you know, trails coming off the roofs and all that other stuff. I mean, anybody living around, I mean, they understand that's all black carbon. And so if we're able to partner, you know, with these cities and local municipalities with some grant funding, the heavy duty vehicles, replacements and all that other stuff, there are street sweepers that are actually rated for PM 2.5. And I was trying to, so to your point where community is looking to the AQMD agency to bring other agencies to a table, to a room. I personally went to the city of LA and the Bureau of Street Services, and because of my internal connections, I was able to sit with some pretty high up people. However, because I didn't have an agency backing, I was just one voice. And it's unfortunate because what I was mentioning to them, one, I had identified that no street sweeping had occurred anywhere in our CSC regularly. I was trying to partner with the council office, but unfortunately our council office, as everyone's aware, has been embroiled with many scandals and whatnot, and because we're Council District 14. And it's just, again, there's an opportunity here with just a single street sweeper could improve air quality in the resuspension of the brake dust, heavy metals, the PM 10 and PM 2.5 emissions that have been depositing on the ground, the sidewalks in which the community walks on every day. And so, again, having more meetings, more important, like one-on-one dialogue, even with those members that, are constantly participating, we could easily really seek out and improve the air quality and really hit these emission targets and improve on it and actually beat it, because right now we have the lowest targeted emission reduction in all of the CSCs throughout California, which is terrible. And yet we are the highest and the most impacted in all of the various CSCs in our community. And so again, we need to partner with these local agencies, Caltrans, the state, EPA, all that stuff. We got to bring all these people together. Otherwise, we won't, achieve our goal of the AB 617 program, period. Thank you. Thanks for the indulgence of time.
Thank you. And I saw somebody else raise their hand, Dr. Beeson.
Follow up on Rafael's that I was not aware of the 2.5 street sweepers. Do you have a proportion of the total number of street sweepers that have that kind of qualification?
So right now, within the Southern California area, so for instance, most, like I know for sure, LA County, as well as the city of Los Angeles, uses Elgin street sweeping machines.
Like 2.0 PM10 or?
No, they're not even rated because that's not their spec.
Right.
They don't specify it, but
it is possible to come up with a 2.5 street sweeper.
Elgin actually offers a PM 2.5 street sweeper,
but they're few and far between.
You have to order them. And so and Elgin, I'm sure is, because I called their company once before I met with the city and asked them, hey, would you be interested in the pilot to test out or at least demonstrate this PM 2.5 machine?
Wow.
And they were saying, hey, sure, because that represents business, especially given that, city of Los Angeles and the LA County, I mean, they're huge customers. They're huge ongoing customers.
And they have kind of filters. There's some sort of monitor so that they know it's validated that it's can capture most, if not all, of the PM 2.5.
Yes, there was Canadian testing that they have on their website. There was some Canadian
so they can
report or whatever that was, ultimately verifying through and published through one of the street sweeping type of periodicals.
That'd be ideal. Great, thanks.
I just wanted to make now we're talking about street sweeping, but actually that brings up a good point, and I'd like to hear your expertise as well. what you're implying actually is that the street sweepers we have out there are actually sucking the particles out of off the ground and redistributing them in the air so we can enjoy them one more time.
That's
Okay.
correct, but
Okay.
yeah,
That's horrible.
yeah, so again, so right now, because there's no street sweeping, what's happening is, and what AQMD, the mobile testing, has found as presented in their report yesterday, was there's a resuspension every time vehicles travel through the streets. So so again, when a big truck goes barreling down a street, all of a sudden, everybody's experienced it before. We were walking along and all of a sudden you got to like close your eyes or squint.
Yeah.
Or you have your window rolled down and all of a sudden, you got some bus or something like that coming by and there's a trail of dust. Well, that dust is PM 2.5,
right?
Heavy metals, brake dust. It's all that black carbon. It's all that.
Yeah, which stays suspended because the 2.5 is lighter. PM10 tends to settle back down again, but the 2.5 can be suspended for a considerable amount of time.
That's right. That's why it's all over. And that's why we have, high incidences of respiratory, issues amongst the various communities. And there's no avoiding that unless we somehow capture that. And that's why I was pushing for the home air filtration system to give immediate relief, while these other implementations were being followed through. But unfortunately, that's my frustration. I could see the big overall picture. I could see how to get there, but it's trying to wrangle everybody and getting them straight. My goodness, because we're losing time. We only have 4 years left of this AB 617 program. 4 years.
I don't see anybody else in the room or around the table with their hand up. Is there anybody in the room? Comment? No, and so I know that online we have Bobby Joe from Sierra Club. We'll hand it over to her if she's still there to provide comment.
Yes, thank you. Again, Bobby Joe Chavarria, Sierra Club, Clean Transportation for All. I really appreciate this conversation about the community. Of course, I am in the Inland Empire based in Fontana. So the San Bernardino Musco area is of particular concern for me and our family. I would say what with the comments and with the presentation, really what has been missing is the collaboration piece. And to speak to what Committee Member Gonzalez was saying about our local politicians, absolutely. I wish we were in the Coachella Valley. Please come and teach our next generation of city leaders, because while we also have an awareness, but a lot of times we have council members, we have elected officials that are philosophically opposed to any kind of control over business, any kind of control over business operations, and to the detriment of community. And of course, AB 617, its goal was to engage in these communities that have been historically redlined. So the engagement piece was always going to take double, triple, quadruple the effort, because these are, again, communities that have been historically marginalized and have an extreme distrust, as well as, technically marginalized in the fact that it's working people, that it's folks that are disengaged into the decision-making process. And so really appreciate the efforts and the focus. And I think it absolutely, collaboration needs to, we need to figure this out. And so maybe part of the directive needs to include school districts and community college districts, especially, to really engage knowledgeable folks who do have some established trust with the community, so that we can start having these collaborative conversations and real solutions. I will say that I agree that there should be perhaps more meetings, but also more like real workshopping of these conversations, of resource gathering and sharing, so that our small operators, our small businesses, our local folks can really tap into layering the multiple programs, not only at the AQMD and CARB, but also with the APA and also the IRA funding that, again, Justice 40 is pointing at communities just like ours. I think it makes sense that we have the steering committees and then we have additional committees working from there, but that's going to take some time to build. And so Sierra Club would love to offer and participate in that conversation, bringing some of our members. And yeah, let's see how we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, community member Chavarria. I see no one else online. So we're gonna thank you for this item. I just want to say two quick comments as I close this item. One, I just want to remind all of us here that your voices really matter. There was something that happened in our COG locally in the Southeast communities, and because of that, now we have some dollars that we're going to go to expanding of freeway to now actual communities. So I think the work that we all do collectively does matter, and I think amplify your voices and raising your voices matters. And so I think the other thing that's really, I see also our chair, Delgado, is here with us, but she's a former mayor of Montebello and I'm a mayor of Linwood. I think I will share this one part. I support our labor community. And one of the things that labor does really well is they do a intro to labor. I did it after the fact. I've been in office for a couple of years, but for someone that has maybe not as much experience in the labor community, it's a really good eye opener of how the labor movement started, how it works, and how in LA it's really a prominent issue. So maybe something that could be done in the future within the AB 617 communities or other groups, maybe AQMD or other groups, is having some sort of like an overview of what AQMD is, what does Caltrans do? Because a lot of folks that get elected don't know all these things. And I say that from experience, and I know my limits, and I wish I knew it all, but I don't know it all. I am a Virgo, so I think I'm perfect sometimes, but I'm not perfect. My partner will tell you, he's in the audience, that I'm not perfect. But that being said, it's not a horrible idea to have like an overview of these different departments, agencies, and it gives all of us a more well-rounded experience and knowledge, because we are the ones making policy, right, for community. So I think it's not a horrible idea. So maybe some sort of collaboration with different agencies would help. And just even admitting this even more, I knew of AQMD. I knew what AQMD was, but not until I got to the board level, government level, I am like overwhelmed with information and how much impact we do have in community, right? So I said that from the experience of, we all know of certain agencies, but don't know really the intricacies and all these rulemakings. It's a lot, and unless you're in these groups, these spaces, you're not going to be as aware. So I just want to amplify the thought process that having electeds throughout the region, throughout the South Coast, be more knowledgeable of AQMD and other agencies is a great idea. And my wheels are spinning of how I could help. Maybe a big picture approach. So my wheels are working, and maybe I'll work with Chair Delgado and see how we can do something at least at this agency to engage more elected officials that we represent in the South Coast, and maybe it could have a ripple effect in other communities. With that, we're going to move on, because I know that time is the essence with this, and I'm excited to hear that I also last comment, I know that we have a timeline for AB 617, so I'm very interested in how this could potentially continue in years to continue. So I don't want Rafael and others to feel discouraged that there's a time, there is a clock now, but I'm hopeful that in the future we can see how we could expand that work that had started with AB 617, and I'm committed to doing that. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 10 and 6, 10th Annual Environmental EJ Conference. I know we have Alejandra Vega with that. And before that, again, Dr. Anissa Hurd Johnson, thank you for your presentation. You are awesome as always, and thank you for just being present in community and always being just awesome. I call her fabulous, so that's what it is. With that, Alejandra.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, EJAC members. My name is Alejandra Vega, and I'm a Senior Public Affairs Specialist in the Legislative Public Affairs and Media Department. Today, I'm thrilled to be sharing a brief update on South Coast AQMD's 10th Annual Environmental Justice Conference. It is tentatively scheduled on Thursday, October 24th, 2024, at Town and Gown of USC in Los Angeles. And it is a special one as it marks a decade of collaboration for clean air. In planning the Environmental Justice Conference, we would like to solicit recommendations from EJAG, as we have done in prior years. Your insights help shape our agenda, speaker selection, and outreach efforts. Currently, we're in the process of finalizing the venue contract, and curating a list of esteemed speakers, including the MC, keynote speaker, and featured panelists. Should Town and Gown of USC serve as our venue, we are excited to offer 2 plenary sessions, providing attendees with an enriching experience and the chance to engage deeply with each session. We are developing an exciting lineup of panel topics designed to be both informative and engaging. We welcome your input on potential discussion themes as we aim to craft a program that resonates with our audience. The conference will run for approximately 4 hours, with registration opening as early as 9 a.m. and the event beginning at 10 a.m. The event is open to all, attendance is free, and breakfast and lunch will be served. We are expecting a diverse group of attendees, including representatives from federal, state, and tribal government agencies, educational institutions, community-based organizations, community leaders, and community members. Stay tuned for our Save the Date invitations via email and social media. The information will be posted on our website. If you have ideas on where you would recommend we outreach for the conference, please let us know. We'd like to gather as much participation as we can. We would also like to request assistance in sharing the Save the Date and EJ conference flyers when they're available. We are incredibly excited about this year's conference and look forward to another successful event. We hope to see you there and look forward to your feedback. You can also email your recommendations to ejcp@aqmd.gov, or we can set up a time to discuss more if you're interested. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alejandra. Any quick questions for Alejandra? Okay, see none. Thank you, and we look forward to participate in that conference.
Thank you.
With that, other matters, any member updates or other business from any committee members or staff for that matter? Okay, seeing none, we will just take formally any public comment on any non-agenda items. Nothing in the audience, anyone online? Okay, we have Mark, one quick comment. Mark and Bobby Joe. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is Mark Abramowitz. It's good to particularly see those of you who were on this committee when Joe Liu chaired it, when I was his board consultant. I just want to talk briefly about something that you folks may not know, and that is that 10% of all NOx emissions from electricity generating facilities in the South Coast AQMD come from just one site, and that is Edison's Catalina site, which is upwind of the entire basin. And that site provides 10% of all NOx emissions, while less than 0.06% of the power. And those emissions are regulated under SEAQMD Rule 1135. I'm asking for your help. It's needed to ensure that the district stands strong against Edison's efforts to continue to operate dirty diesels on Catalina Island. Edison is trying to avoid efforts to replace them with zero emission generation. Edison has proposed rule language that would actually increase emissions from a proposed updated rule that the Stationary Source Committee said was inadequate. They basically told district staff to stick it. District staff has done great work showing that zero emission technologies on Catalina are feasible, but district management appears to be on the verge of capitulation. I've been fighting clean air for over 40 years, and I can't remember a more arrogant and cavalier company than Edison has been on this issue. That's saying a lot. So what I would like to suggest is that the EJAG explore this issue and the proposed rule, and maybe ask staff to come back with a presentation on the status of eliminating diesel engines and putting it on the agenda. Because I understand it's not on the agenda today. There can't be any discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. With that, Committee Member Chavarria. Bobby.
There we go. So thank you again. I guess my final comments would be about something also not on the agenda, but the upcoming rail yard ISR indirect source rule public hearings that will be set for August. We had been in communication with AQMD staff about community meetings and workshops in person. And now I'm realizing, or I did at the time as well, that those community events were originally targeted for the AB 617 communities, so San Bernardino, Wilmington, and East LA. Those in-person meetings have not have been canceled and now moved to virtual to inform a community about these rail yard ISRs. And so I wanted to let staff know, we actually already let staff know, but invite this committee or this group to we here in San Bernardino, the Sierra Club is working with local clean air advocates and supporters to host a community-led workshop on this rail yard ISR. Would invite folks out in the community, elected officials, members of the broader board to attend and listen in on community feedback as they learn about this ISR and where we see it can be strengthened. We are also working with Earth Justice and our East Yards and Move LA allies to do something similar in the LA area. So at least there are 2 workshops from between now and the public hearing in August. We are hoping that we can strengthen the language and make sure that community voices understand what's at stake with these ISR. And as you all heard earlier, the warehouse ISR has definitely moved both the technological development and the investments made by the business community, which we feel that a strong rail ISR and a strong ports rail ISR, a strong ports ISR by the end of the year can do the same for other big polluters in the community. So I really appreciate the effort and energy on focusing on these communities, and like to figure out how we collaborate and partner to ensure that time and time again, these communities don't get silenced or ignored or not invited to the table simply because of time crunch, of capacity. We have to figure out how to work together and make sure that we bring as many folks to the table. Every community member who's breathing this air is a stakeholder. Whether or not they're making money off of this community, they are a stakeholder in the community and they need to be incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Chavarria. That concludes our public comment. With that, we do want to announce our next meeting is August 23rd. And then before we adjourn the last 5 seconds, I want to just a personal privilege to acknowledge that my partner was forced to come to this meeting on his birthday. So I want to acknowledge him as his birthday today. So he gets a 2.5-hour meeting of AQMD for his birthday. So with that, if there's no objections, we are adjourned.
Really quickly,
Sure.
I'm sorry, right
Yes,
here.
yes.
My
Here we go again.
sincere
Half second
Happy
more.
birthday, by the way. If we could add that item on the agenda for the next meeting, that one of the commenters brought up, Rule 1135, I'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And then same with the board members. So just a little add. So last night, at our meeting, they did mention that there was supposed to be something in terms of the railroad ISR. Someone had mentioned that there was a meeting or workshop had been planned for June, the beginning of June. I think it was like the 2nd or the 4th. So if staff could find out, it would be helpful to get the word out, especially to this members, the CSC members, and many of the other CSCs. We want to attend because it's super, super important. So do you?
Just real quick, yes, we do have the public workshop, which is sort of the more formal one, goes through all the detail. That's on June 4th at 1 p.m. That will be virtual. And then we also have a community meeting meant to be more for just general discussion. That will be on June 5th, and that's an evening meeting, again, virtual at 6 o'clock.
Good. Thank you for that clarification. And I work with the chair, Campos, to add those items to the next agenda. With that, there's no objection. Now, instead of 228, it's 229. Thank you, Harim and Rafael, for adding another minute to Jason's birthday. Have a good day, everyone.